And lawyers, guns, and money.
So that'll take us to our second topic. If you're a boxing fan, this is, I'm told, the biggest story in the past couple of years in boxing, let alone the intersection between boxing and the law, which is there's not that much overlap. Dan and I haven't talked about that yet.
Oh, so, there is, au contraire, Daniel. Boxing litigation is its own subspecialty because you have no oversight body, no regulatory. We have all these alphabet groups, boxers suing promoters, promoters suing boxers, managers suing promoters. It is an endless, march in the court system. And, my old boss, Jay Goldberg, used to say there are no new cases, just new faces. And he must have been talking about the boxing business and the court system.
I'll correct my prior statement. We'll say no boxing legal stories that come across that ticker that we've spoke about. That is more rare. Maybe you have different lawsuits. So just a quick background to Canelo Alvarez. He's one of the best, we'll say, pound for pound fighters in the world. People will have heard of this, we'll say, the streaming platform called DAZN. A guy by the name of John Skipper, formerly with ESPN. He's been behind the magic over there. I listened to him probably a year ago at this point, do a podcast with Bill Simmons, and he talked about DAZN's got a big pocket. They're going to try to buy up all these different boxing events. They're going to take over the sports world one sport at a time. So their first foray was boxing, and that was after HBO Sports went down. And their first really big get was Canelo Alvarez, one of the top boxers in the world. He's in his early 30s. He's really in the prime, still in the very much the prime of his career. Back in late 2018, he signed an exclusive deal with DAZN, that is spelled out DAZN, if people don't know what DAZN is. And essentially, it was a 11-fight deal. It was going to be $350 million to be paid out. It was right around there. I think it was in the vicinity of between 35 million in that vicinity for each fight. Now, there is some discrepancy as to who had final approval over which fight and if it was going to be DAZN's call. And also, we should note that Canelo Alvarez, his direct deal was with Golden Boys Production, which is Oscar De La Hoya's company. He serves as the CEO. So they're all involved in this. And just for factual purposes, Canelo Alvarez had 3 fights under the DAZN label. A guy by the name of Gennady Golovkin, you'll know him as Triple G. He was signed to this DAZN label in early 2019. So those two had fought twice. The initial intention, per reports from Dan's colleagues over at The Athletic, was that the whole purpose of this DAZN deal, to sign Triple G, a couple months after signing Canelo Alvarez, was to have this trilogy fight at some point in 2019. Now, Dan, we're ending we've gone past 2019, now we're nearing the end of 2020. There is no Gennady Golovkin, Canelo Alvarez fight on the radar, and I think that is painting a lot of these conversations. So, Dan, I will turn it over to you. We have a $280 million breach of contract suit filed by Canelo Alvarez against Oscar De La Hoya personally, against Golden Boys Productions, against DAZN. He's really named a ton of players in here. Dan, what do you think about the lawsuit? And what do you think about the lawsuit getting kicked out within a couple hours of it being filed?
Yeah, it's actually a former lawsuit as we speak. On Friday, September 11th, a day that lives in our country's, history forever. On that day, the judge overseeing the federal court case in the Central District of California in Los Angeles entered an order sua sponte. Now, sua sponte means the judge didn't wait for... Dan. Yeah. Dan, do you know what sua sponte means?
Yes, Mr. Wallach, Professor Wallach, I apologize. It means that the judge decided to do something on his own without somebody asking him to do it.
Yeah, and because the judge, in this case, you win and you get the A+ answer. And we didn't discuss this beforehand, so you earn that on merit.
I know a thing or two.
Yeah. What I've seen quite a bit in federal court practice is when a complaint on its face fails to properly allege the jurisdictional minimums, the jurisdictional requirements like diversity of citizenship. You've got to allege the citizenship of the different parties and make sure the plaintiffs are completely diverse from all the defendants. And what I mean by diversity is your citizenship, state of incorporation, place where you live. In this case, Alvarez's attorneys made an error. They alleged that 2 of the limited liability company defendants, there was a DAZN USA LLC entity and Golden Boy Promotions LLC entity. There were multiple corporate entities that were sued for both Golden Boy and DAZN, and LLC was among the sued defendants. But for LLCs, you can't just simply allege where they are incorporated, where they're registered, or where their principal places of business are. In federal court practice, for diversity purposes, the citizenship of a limited liability company is determined by the citizenship of the individual members who comprise the LLC. And what the complaint failed to do here was identify or list the citizenships or residencies of the different LLC members. And the complaint got kicked out without prejudice, and Canelo Alvarez's attorneys were given until September 28th to cure that defect and to properly allege diversity of citizenship. So again, it's temporary, you know, roadblock or a little minor bump on the road to judgment, because inevitably they will either cure this defect by dropping the limited liability company defendants or by listing the residence or the citizenship of the individual members. But it begs the question, how do you find out who the members of an LLC are? That isn't necessarily public information. When you go to a state attorney general or Department of Business Regulation and you look up companies, you don't necessarily see all the shareholders or the LLC members. So Dan, is there a way of ascertaining that?
For those in podcast world, I was raising my hand and I wasn't called on because I had a really good answer. Dan, this could be an emergency discovery proceeding, just like we saw in the Nebraska action. I had one over in, I think it was Queens Supreme Court, but somebody sued us pre-suit. They just, I'll give you the brief facts for those that don't care about sports. They just sign up for the law. Someone wanted to know the actors of a particular, we had an accident over at a recreation park. And they wanted to know the different staff members that were on site because they wanted to include them personally named in the lawsuit for whatever reason. So we got hit with pre-suit discovery to figure out the names of potential witnesses, and they wanted to see different documents. So they were trying to figure out the necessary parties involved. So sometimes you got to deal with that in the law. So yeah, I mean, that's what you could do. And Dan, I'd be remiss. You know, there really are two ways this lawsuit could go from this point. A, they could just refile, which might be the route. I guess they could do emergency discovery if they want to listen to our podcast. Shout out to Canelo Alvarez's attorneys if you are listening. But the other route, Dan, is the one that Oscar De La Hoya, who was a named defendant in the lawsuit individually, and I should mention, you know, if you were named in an individually in a lawsuit, there could be a couple reasons. One of them, you know, Dan and I were talking offline. One of them could be because there's an accusation of fraud, as there is here, in which you would allege that you would be piercing the corporate veil and you'd have to go after them personally. You know, Dan, I'll let you speak to the other one, but, you know, De La Hoya on his Twitter feed, he's got 1 million followers. You know, I don't know if he posts that much, but he's Oscar De La Hoya. So, you know, we got to check his feed for stories like this. This is from him. This is on Saturday. While yesterday's order does not end the case, we are hopeful that this era will allow us to reset and refocus on what's important, working together to get Canelo back in the ring against the top opponent ASAP. If not, we expect Canelo's lawyers will now enter arbitration as is laid out in our contract. So Dan and I spoke offline. We have not seen the contract. That is not something that is public that we've seen. But what Oscar De La Hoya is saying, as most big contracts would have, is that there is a necessary and compulsory arbitration clause. So that might be the next route, Dan, if they don't want to take the route that you know, you laid out on Twitter, taking a temporary restraining order, seeking injunctive relief. Maybe just go to arbitration and you fast track this.
Well, two thoughts on that. I thought it was notable that Alvarez's attorneys did not include a copy of the agreement between Alvarez and Golden Boy as an exhibit to the complaint. Generally, when you file a breach of contract lawsuit, your complaint not only has to specify which provisions of the agreement were breached, but normally, at least it's required in state court in a number of different states. In Florida, you have to attach the contract. And what the failure to attach the contract here tells me, or at least gives me some really strong indication that there's probably some language in the contract that's not really all that helpful, you know, to Canelo Alvarez. And I would think the arbitration clause would be front and center, because if there was a mandatory arbitration provision that really was airtight, he wouldn't be able to move forward with this lawsuit. The judge would either dismiss it sua sponte or compel arbitration, or the parties would file, or I'm sorry, Golden Boy would file a motion to dismiss or motion to compel arbitration. But the fact that there's an arbitration clause between Golden Boy and Alvarez does not preclude Alvarez from suing DAZN in the court system, because as many of you who are lawyers and studying law, non-signatories to an arbitration agreement are not bound by that arbitration agreement. There are exceptions, and certainly when the overall relationship is integrated, where there's an arbitration clause in the deal between DAZN and Golden Boy, and an arbitration clause in the deal between Golden Boy and Alvarez, maybe that presents a stronger case for arbitration of the entire controversy. But I just don't think that that Alvarez, as a non-signatory, is bound to arbitrate his dispute with DAZN. And let's not make any mistake about it. The real heart of the controversy here is DAZN's repudiation, or at least backing away from its contractual commitment to pay a $40 million license fee, to Golden Boy Promotions. It's DAZN's failure to live up, or alleged failure to live up to, its contractual commitments that are at the heart of this agreement. And I think this case is really the first major COVID-19 lawsuit, and in many ways, DAZN is following Under Armour's blueprint for trying to disavow its contractual commitments in the COVID-19 era, because the contract to pay Canelo 11 fight deal, 300 or 400 million, whatever the amount is, it's probably not quite as valuable in a COVID-19 environment when you don't have a live gate, and maybe there's less interest in boxing. Who knows? But they're in a precarious position as a company. They're trying to go public. They're looking for new equity investors. They're furloughing employees. Their subscriptions have been down, and they've been making efforts to avoid paying rights fees on some of these canceled games. So their position as a company is dramatically different than it was in 2018 when they needed this deal.
Yeah, I guess a couple things. The one I'd be remiss if we didn't forget, the Oscar De La Hoya is included in the caption, number one, because I mentioned for fraud, and Dan and I spoke up on it. There's an allegation that Oscar De La Hoya was a personal signatory on this guarantor on the actual contract.
That will get you sued.
Yeah, either way, you'll get in there one way or the other. So I think the other part of this, if you're just kind of reading between the lines, and Dan kind of alluded to it, in Golden Boy's unofficial response when they spoke to the media while the lawsuit was still active, for that brief window, they did say that under the contract, which Dan and I haven't seen, that there is essentially no affirmative obligation by Golden Boys to have any events sans fans. It's completely optional. They have no obligation to do so. So that would probably be their immediate defense, that they couldn't have breached the contract in that sense because they didn't have an obligation to fight. But I think the second one, which we have to kind of watch too, Golden Boy also signaled that they also have say over who the fighter can be in any given context. And I think if we're just trying to speculate here, as lawyers do, sometimes we have to kind of look for those type of answers. I think there is a world, Dan, that this lawsuit was filed at $280 million, on a slow Tuesday, to try to get people talking about Canelo Alvarez again, because the man has not fought, I believe, in over a year. We haven't seen him in a boxing ring in a while, so he's now back in the public conscience, for better or for worse. I didn't see free Canelo Alvarez trending, which might have been his intention from this.
Well, I mean, boxing has changed a lot since the 1970s, 1980s, when fighters like Mike Tyson would fight somebody every month. Canelo Alvarez has been on a 2-fight per year schedule since 2015. And guess how many fights he's had in 2020? He's had 0. I mean, COVID-19 is playing a significant role in that, but a number of boxing associations and matches in both UFC and outside of the UFC have made accommodations for either playing in a bubble, playing on a side, having the event staged without fans. And in this over the top, streaming era that we're in, the live gate really isn't as significant as it used to be. The majority of the revenues come from pay-per-view and broadcasting and streaming, and it doesn't seem logical or plausible that boxing matches would not be able to move forward when you have other combat sports conducting their cards, and all the major sports back except for the Big Ten. So I think there's a way, if DAZN or De La Hoya are trying to stand on a force majeure clause, first of all, we haven't seen the clause yet, but I don't think the scheduling of a bout would be reasonably beyond the control of the parties, or whether the pandemic places the scheduling of a bout beyond their control, because you could still stage a match, sell pay-per-view, and generate probably like 90% of what you would be able to do without a live gate. So I think I understand Canelo's dilemma, because he hasn't fought this year, and as a 30-year-old fighter, the window is certainly closing at some point on his career. And this 11-fight deal is supposed to cover 4 or 5 years until 2023. And he's only 3 fights into an 11-fight deal, and he's been inactive this year. So what that suggests to me is that if this lawsuit doesn't prompt a reaction or some negotiation towards a solution or resolution, we could be seeing, emergency injunction, preliminary injunction, motion practice very soon, because lawsuits take a long time to play out. Summary judgment, discovery, trial, appeals. I think that Canelo either needs to move for TRO, or just sign a deal with another promoter for a one-fight contract, after giving a deadline for DAZN and De La Hoya to try to make good on the contractual commitments. And if they don't do so, he should be able to move forward with another promoter without being in breach of his existing deal, and let De La Hoya and DAZN try to preliminarily enjoin him, because one of the elements that will definitely not be able to be satisfied here is any irreparable harm to Golden Boy or to DAZN. And an athlete with a limited time in which to ply his trade basically faces the ruination of his career if he goes any extensive length of time without being active.
So, obviously Dan and I will continue to monitor that, and stay tuned to our social media feeds for updates on that one.